This is the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast, hosted by Jo Youle. Each new moon, we'll explore with our guests how to think globally and act locally with ecofeminism. Awaken all your senses. The spirit of the witches comes to your ears. The Sabbath is that way. Gang of
Welcome back to the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast. And as you can hear at the start of today's episode, we are on the boat to Formentera, the smallest of the Pitiuses Islands in the Balearics, to meet a very special guest who was born and bred on this tiny chunk of land and was formerly the Environment Minister for the Consell De Formentera. So we're popping over to meet Daisee Aguilera this morning because she's just been playing host to a very important international event with 10 different countries in attendance to share their vision on how to work together towards the protection of our waters. Last month, we popped to Palma to chat to the Marias Foundation about what the state the Balearic Sea was in, but today we're focusing more deeply on what's being done and what needs to happen next, as this month in October also marks the Marine Forum on Ibiza, with some of the biggest players coming to these islands to widen the conservation conversation. So it felt fitting today to commence this introduction as we cross the water just above this exact stretch of sea, because this is a marine protected area called Es Freus. It's the largest one in the Balearics, and it's 13,000 hectares. And so much of this podcast has been focused on the work going on right underneath the bow of this vessel as I wing my way across the waters to find Daisee. She was once a marine biologist, but she now focuses her energies on how she can put back into the islands that she loves so much. And to hear a little bit more about her work last month as she hosted the organisations working on marine conservation, government representatives at local, regional and international levels, the maritime prefect from Ibiza and Formentera and France, yachting agents, scuba divers, scientists and marine conservation consultants to work out if real legislation could be implemented to safeguard the Posidonia, which plays such a crucial role in giving life and breath to the Balearic Sea that I'm now surrounded by. Don't go away. So Daisee, welcome to the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast.
Hi.
So first off, I think we should set the scene because you've just brought me to an incredibly magical spot for today's podcast.
Well, actually, we're in the natural park of Salinas, and we're on the east side of Islas Beach.
Nice. I think a lot of people will know where that is. It's one of the very, very famous beaches of the island. I mean, we've got almost like a 360 of this stunningly beautiful aquamarine water in every direction. I look around me, I can see, it almost sort of feels like we're on the moon with these great big rock formations, and the colour of this water is almost blinding.
Yes, well, we're surrounded by dunes. We're surrounded by some of the most pristine waters, thanks to the Posidonia, and it's quite towards the end of the season, so it's just a lovely time to be enjoying the scenery here with you.
And I just loving the sound of these lapping waves here in the background. We can hear gently sort of kissing the rocks right behind us.
Welcome to Formentera, Gang of Witches.
Thank you very much. I mean, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about you to begin with. You used to be a marine biologist in a former life and the Minister for the Environment at the Consell. But what do you do now? Tell us a bit about your life on Formentera at the moment.
Well, to be honest, I've always had a close link to the sea. So starting off as a small diving instructor, helping out in one of the local dive centres, then sailing, then went on to being on boats, and then currently, after the 4 years in being in the local government, helping as much as I could with my technical experience to further preserve the island, of which I've decided to stay here. I mean, I've travelled the world, I've worked in different countries, in different islands, in different places, so my decision to stay here is complete. People started to ask me for help with different projects on marine studies, on conservation, on awareness, and I've set up my own consultancy, environmental consultancy, White Sand Solutions. So yeah, we're doing many different projects and trying to put our granito de arena, as we say in Spanish, our small grain of sand towards the cause.
Well, it's an absolutely beautiful place to be doing exactly that. And I have to ask you where that incredible accent comes from, because I really, really love it. But you were born and bred in Formentera, so I just wonder whereabouts that comes from.
Yes, well, I'm half English. My mum is from Durham. I studied in the Newcastle University, and my dad is Spanish. And my family always try to tell me to round my vowels as much as I can. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But yes, northeast of England would be the Geordie accent coming on.
No, it's a beautiful thing, but it's interesting, obviously, because I guess you predominantly speak Spanish, and English actually isn't really your number one language to go to.
Well, I've spent quite of my time in Spain, in Formentera, and yes, I mean, that was one of the main reasons of why going to study at university in Britain, to see what part of my British side was about. So yes, that's how I've maintained that Geordie accent that I try to hide it sometimes.
Well, I think it's very endearing, and yeah, thank you very much for speaking English to us today, first and foremost. So you obviously, as we've said, born and bred here on Formentera, and I cannot think of a more beautiful place in the world to have lived all your life. You said that we're we're in Ses Salines, which is obviously, looking out over Es Freus, which is the largest marine protected area in the Balearics. Is this the largest network of Posidonia in the world, though, that we're looking over right now?
So the marine protected area of Ses Salines is, as you know, is the part of the UNESCO. It's Patrimonio de la Humanidad. It's a UNESCO site. So we're now here in Ses Salines Natural Park, and it's a mixed site. So this means that it's recognized by its historical value of the patrimonio, but this is a patrimonio which is historically but also a natural heritage, which is the seagrasses of Formentera. Now, the seagrasses of Formentera and Ibiza is one of the largest meadows. It's a continuous meadows, and that is why it was recognized in 1999 as a UNESCO site for its large Posidonia seagrass.
Which is just, such a magical thing. And I'm not sure I've really recorded a podcast, if I'm going to be completely honest, in such a beautiful location in all my years of actually making them. So thank you for bringing me here. If anyone has, been to Ses Salines, they'll know exactly how clear the water is here, which you referred to already, is obviously thanks to the Posidonia. In truth, it's in terms of their value as an ecosystem, they come in right at the very, very top in terms of what they deliver to our seas. So when you live in Formentera and you grew up here, is that something that you're kind of taught about from a really young age out of interest?
So one of the things that we're trying to demonstrate from now, in my perspective from an environmental consultancy, is that you can get used to having these lovely waters, you can get used to the tranquility, you can get used to living on an island where you're not constantly thinking about what time do I have to get the bus, what time do I get the metro, what time do I have to change my car and the parking ticket. So we as local people, we need to put in value this and realise by travelling to different places that we're quite lucky. We're quite lucky to be in a place where I grew up and my parents were working and we were out on the beach, we were out skating, or security is really something that we're really lucky. And I think from the experience that I have as an entrepreneur who's travelled to many different countries and worked in different places is that we need to realise that what is out there is very special, but what we have here is also very special. So we need to put in value, security, transport, being close to nature, education is accessible. I mean, we're a very small island, but we have access to many different things. So I think that's something that we need to put in value, and not just complain that we live on an island where we have to get the ferry to Ibiza. I mean, it's just a half an hour. How many people go to work every day and have to spend an hour on the ferry or an hour on the train? Our days are quite productive, to be honest. So I think if by any means all the different places in the world have good things and bad things. So I think as a positive person that I like to be is finding the good things in life and making them worth it.
I mean, 100%. I love your point there about the older commute to work. And I know, obviously, living in London, getting on that dirty, filthy, tube every single day to get to the office was miserable. And there's a reason to potentially complain, but looking out as I am right now, I think exactly that. Half an hour ferry across these magical, disgustingly gorgeous waters doesn't feel like something to moan about. I mean, I'm interested, as we've said, education is kind of everything in a place like this. How much is the environment where you're always so close to nature here infused into the school system?
So I think the education system, the teachers, many of the teachers are local, but also they come from outside, and they too have this amazing view of when they arrive here. So this is something that kids from all ages are aware of what's being valued. So I think on the education side, it's something that's been worked on, and you can see it more and more time. You have kids going abroad to study, kids going to different places in Spain to become a qualified scientist, a qualified engineer, a qualified professional skipper. So this is something that's been done from the schools.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was slightly distracted by a naked man over there. He's actually wringing out his pants, I think, in the pristine waters.
That's something quite normal for us. It happens all the time.
Anyway, back to the podcast. I think, I can just imagine, having those kinds of classes and that kind of, narrative within the education system here. And as I said, growing up in a place like this, I can imagine that, had a bit of an influence in terms of, what made you so aware and wanting to protect Mother Nature in your chosen career. So, I can't imagine that you would grow up here without feeling, those kinds of feelings and this abundance of beauty. And obviously Ibiza is gorgeous as well. But here, I think it just feels a little bit more protected. It's a little bit less built up.
To your question of how was it for me growing up in a place like this, I was just remembering, we have the Escuela de Naturaleza, where we did excursions, we did camping to see the stars at night. Sometimes we'd just walk along the beaches in February and we'd find turtles. We'd find a turtle that had been hooked up in the nets. We'd find big dolphins that we'd had to rescue. So all these different things were happening while we were growing up. So I think what you see in the books, what you see in now, what they see on the screens, if you see it live, I think it makes a difference to you bringing up, and it makes you want to help in that sense.
Not probably what you would have experienced had you actually gone back to your mother's birthplace and grown up in Sunderland. So last month you hosted this enormous event, the Mediterranean Posidonia Network event. And, this was the very first face-to-face meeting that you guys had after recent events that you all got together finally in the same room after many, many months of preparation. And I thought it was 10 countries, because I think that's what it said on your website, but it was actually 11 international organisations. So first off, massive congratulations on that huge achievement, getting all those people there. Because I think when this idea was born in Greece 2 years ago, looking at the people dropping anchor on the Posidonia, it was a lot smaller.
Yes, I mean, people came from all the different corners of the Mediterranean. We had a variety of authorities, international organizations, as you said. We had scientists, we also had divers, we had the nautical sector, and I think they all came from their different. We had people from small islands. I mean, we had Malta, we had Tunisia, we had Algeria, we had Cyprus, Greece. So it was a big effort for them to come here, but the main thing was what they wanted to take home is to know about the last 10-year experience on what we've been doing on Posidonia, and that meeting in Athens was anchors away. So what we tried to do in the Mediterranean Posidonia Network, where we do online meetings every month, was to actually get to know each other, get to know what the situation and what hotspots are in the different countries, and basically show them what we're doing in Formentera and how they can have an example of what is being done somewhere else and what can be done in their places. So, I mean, we were talking about education before, but awareness campaigns, so podcasts and media has helped a lot of in Formentera. We've had a lot of help from the nautical sector, but also from all kinds of stakeholders. So it's what we're saying, it's to try and speak the same language, so bringing people together with different interests but with the same mission, which is to protect the place where they live.
It makes total sense. I think one of the things we're going to talk about later in the podcast is that obviously the economy and the health of the sea are just so intrinsically and closely linked, so it just makes such complete sense to look after our environment. But I was reading earlier that the Posidonia has shrunk 34% according to reports in the last 50 years. And obviously climate change is a factor in that, and so is toxic waste, which we talked about in our last episode with the Mediterranean Foundation. But human activity is kind of interesting because, we had a pretty busy summer this summer, post-COVID this season. I think, once the Posidonia is killed by an anchor, for example, being dropped on it, it's so slow to regrow that, and almost, rarely even reformed, hardly at all. Which is why this is obviously such a huge issue, because it's not replaceable, and it's not something that's just going to come back just as voraciously as it obviously grew when it first kind of came onto this planet, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
So that is why awareness and education is the key factor to prevent those anchors destroying the Posidonia. I mean, there's innovation going on at the minute. There was different organisations who are actually providing knowledge on the growth rate, restoration projects. But I think the key message needs to be that we need to work on preventing the damage to the ecosystems, because as you say, the growth rates are maybe not there for us to see. So one of the main objectives of the week was to apply different technologies, different solutions, but to prevent and to make awareness campaign the key factor, which is something that has worked in Formentera. I mean, the guests were amazed. They went on the bus, and we have the roundabout of the Posidonia. They were going to the restaurants, and they had Posidonia mats at the restaurants. They went to the supermarket, and they've got different. Everywhere is the main ecosystem. We know there's many other different things to protect, but the message and the line, the music is about Posidonia. So I think the key message was sent, and I'm sure we'll be hearing back from all the different destinations with their updates in the next meeting.
Almost feels like a sort of like mini COP26 for the Posidonia. It's kind of like, it feels like such a huge kind of coup really for Formentera to have kind of gotten that together, which of course you played a huge part of. I think for a small island like this to have got 11 countries from across the Mediterranean all together in one room, particularly after what's just been going on in the last few years, is a really big thing. And it is just such a conversation that needs to be placed at the forefront of the fight that we're fighting right now. And that isn't, obviously it's kind of becoming more of a storyline in the newspapers and in the media and the press, but it's something that just cannot be ignored. And I think a lot of people, which I love mostly about my visits to Formentera, feel so passionately about the Posidonia. You've got like cafes and restaurants and bars and even jewellery being made from the Posidonia I've seen once upon a time. Oh my God, you're actually wearing... Of course you are. You're wearing it. I was going to ask you about that because I would love nothing more than to. Wow. Okay. Amazing. We'll refer to that. But I think Posidonia just feels like almost like some sort of religion when you come to Formentera.
So yeah, I'm actually it's jewelry. It's one of the local designers. He makes Posidonia into every single type of jewelry that you wish for. You can have it. Rings, bracelets, necklace, you name it. You've got it. So one of the main things that we got from the Mediterranean Posidonia Network was that during the workshop, what we figured out was that so the Balearics is one of the pioneering regions where they've applied regulation to protect Posidonia. That was back in 2018. In France this year they've implemented regulations to protect Posidonia, and what has happened is that just beside France, a little bit further on, we've got other destinations that have noticed a big increment in yachting. So Croatia was there, and they said, we didn't have a problem with anchors from yachts until this year. But why? Because different regulations are being set slowly in different countries. So what we wanted to do is to gather everybody around to make a common strategy so that the good things that are happening in some places do not negatively affect other places. So then we had Algeria. Algeria doesn't have a problem with boating, with yachting. They have a problem with fishing. Fishing affects the meadows as well, but in a different context. So Algeria was asking for more awareness within their authorities to actually make them realise that it's important. So it was lovely to know all the different difficulties that the countries have, and to make a common strategy. What we need to realise that we can apply regulations on land, and we don't have a problem with it. We have car parks where we need to park our cars and pay our fees, but we can apply the same things at sea. So the sea is everyone's. The sea is de todos, is the saying in Spanish. So the sea is it's free to navigate, but we can apply for regulation so that when we are at sea, we can enjoy and everyone can be in their own bits. So it was a really special event, and I think all the different countries enjoyed it. We didn't just talk about Posidonia. We went diving, we went kayaking, we went snorkeling, so they could get a perception of the different people who work in their own different places, to take that home.
Yeah, I think doing practical exercises really, enables people to experience it directly, see it with their own eyes, appreciate it with their own senses, I think, in some respects, and, really, really grow this sense of respect for the Posidonia. And I think, when I was reading some of the information from the Mediterranean Posidonia Network workshops or on the website and learning, some more nerdy facts about it. 50 species of fish live inside it. In the habitat, it's a refuge and breeding ground for 400 plant species, and it can suck in just as much carbon as a whole forest. And I think, the carbon sequestration does manage to offset, sort of stays there for thousands of years under the water. Now, for somebody that's probably not that bothered or interested in Posidonia, that, kind of might make you just understand exactly how important it is. And I find these facts, once they've kind of been mentioned, and we've mentioned some of them in the last episode, but I think, they are mind-boggling. And I think once you really start to kind of learn and gain that knowledge, for anyone to drop an anchor or cause any kind of harm to the Posidonia feels really, really, really quite obscene. So I think, being, as you said before, as it only grows like 1 millimetre a year when it's damaged, which is obviously, minor growth. It feels like Posidonia is like, as we said, the god of Formentera. And I think, you could almost kind of compare its significance to the mangrove forests in North America or the coral reefs in Australia. But what, apart from anchors and apart from climate change, what would you say as a result of the network meetings that you kind of felt like its biggest threat actually is?
Well, there's as you say, there's many different threats. After what we did want to focus on the meeting was on the anchoring issue, because otherwise it wouldn't just have been 1 week; it would have been a whole month of different workshops. So at the minute, we know that the Balearics has a really big yachting industry. It has small boats, large yachts. It has charter sector. It has many different marinas. We've got eco marine, and I mean it's a really big industry that gives a lot of jobs and it gives a lot of opportunities. So this is also replicating in other Mediterranean destinations. So at the minute, what the MPN, as we call it, is focusing is just on the anchoring issue, and the other issues will be coming on further steps. We've got professionals working on restoration. We've got professionals working on sewage impacts. That coastal development was one of the worries in Tunisia, was one of the worries in Algeria. So that will come, but we always need to find a common mission to keep everyone motivated, and things will come from that. But as we say before, the Posidonia is the star species here, but we've also got other different species. But we need to start somewhere, and this was one of the starting points of the first Mediterranean Posidonia Network workshop.
Once upon a time in Ibiza, with Alex Gray.
With love, Posidonia. I dance beneath the turquoise veil, naked, scorned, pain, no glory, ravaged by the shards of truth. Can you hear my echoes? Do you fear my story? Like a muted note bursting, the trumpet player rehearsing, I writhe my body amidst the iridescence dispersing. I bellow my charms to reach the goddess above. I plead to her, teach them true love. The clouds parted widely by her deep fiery breath, she incarnates as a mermaid, scales, blood and flesh. Seething, reeling, darkened shadows of face, outrolls her tongue, spoken words, fearless grace. Startled I stand, curious this creature, a gift from above, humanity's teacher. She speaks. Behold, pirates of our earth, seas and skies, your ignorant bliss will be your demise. You have wrapped yourselves up in a suffocating web. You have abused my seas, abolishing the natural order, the flow, the ebb. A simmering soup of ego and smoke. Oh, my dear humans, did it not occur you may choke? What is the attraction for this atrocious boat that takes you from island to island just so you can gloat, fashioning your identity on the front of the yacht, traveling with speed to the new hottest spot? You excrete your toxins into water and air, the torture and destruction. Do you even care? I bear myself to you, unraveled, undone. I call you to witness the weight of my tongue. Aghast at your inability to see the iridescent expressions of life under me. The magic of creation, the matrix of the sea, all of this for you, for him, for she. The tapestry of life, the oneness in trust, the lungs of the planet are dying. Listen, take action, you must. Stop. May my words echo like thunderbolts so frightening. Where is your passion, your rage, your inspired action? You are looking the wrong way. You are looking the wrong way. Take your glance off fake news and the wireless. Can you see? Humans, you have become the new virus. And just like that, she swims, disintegrating along the way. In awe of her, I hope, I pray. With love, Posidonia.
So as we're looking out now towards Es Vedra, across the MPA of Es Freus, we also look towards Salinas, the marine protected park that you were talking about at the beginning, the World UNESCO Heritage Site. And that forms obviously part of Ibiza, but also stretches all the way across here. And it's known for its salt that's harvested here, but also across the pond in Ibiza. So I'd love to sort of hear a little bit more about that. We're moving on from Posidonia now. I really would love to hear some more of the wonderful work that goes on here in terms of that sort of farming.
So we're slightly moving on from Posidonia, but we're not abandoning it just yet. So as you mentioned, we've got the salt flats industry, which was here before the tourism industry. We've got salt flats in the south of Ibiza, but also in the north of Formentera. And the two different salt production is done differently. So in the south of Ibiza, you have let's say solid salt. So it's being produced with some kind of techniques. And then in the north of Formentera, we have liquid salt. It's the sal líquida. So it's two different places with salt production, but two different results. So the salt of Formentera, which is what I know, is salt that is being made into liquid, and it's the business who's exploiting that is called Posidonia. And this is because the water enters from the natural park through the Canal de Saseki, goes into the lagoon of Estampuden, and then filters into the salt flats. So what they say is that the salt that it's been produced is being really oxygenated thanks to the Posidonia, so hence the commercial name called the salt of Posidonia.
Right. So of course, yeah. It's just another great reason why Formentera worships the Posidonia, because they obviously can make a lot of money out of it as well. So, you know, when people talk about the marine protected area of Salinas, people think purely of the salt flats. But it is a natural wildlife reserve between the islands that we see now, and it consists of a variety of ecosystems, and among those are coastal lagoons, and the flats, of course, but also the wide stretch of sea that connects Ibiza and Formentera has many tiny islands dotted between the two main islands, which include wetlands and sandy beaches and some very well developed dune systems. Can we talk about the amazing way here on Formentera, not just on Ceciletes, but also Playa Mijon, for example, where you can't walk on the dunes, and the way you've got these amazing like wooden walkways that have obviously been created to protect against, I'm assuming, coastal erosion?
So the dune protection occurs not just on the Mijon, but all around the island. So we've got these boards, these ropes that stop people crossing all over the dunes, and it's all protected, and it guides people the way that it needs to be guided. I mean, there's signposts that it's here to help and to invite people to enjoy the island in a way that that doesn't harm it. So we welcome everybody, but we want them to learn on how to keep on coming so that they can take something away with them, which is to appreciate the place where they visited.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful concept, and I think somehow it just, provides that little bit of extra awareness of just how precious this island is and how well preserved it is even now. You know, all these years in, it still looks like a place where it's quite untouched, really, I think, in comparison to Ibiza. And I think one of my favourite things about the place that we're sitting right now, and I can almost see out of the corner of my eye as the waves roll in, is that just that little bit of pink crystal in the water. And it's one of my absolute favourite things about coming to Formentera, is to take a walk down this very beach and see those little pink crystals dangling in the waves. Like, can you tell us a bit more about those?
Well, to be honest, we went to Es Freus with the French Biodiversity Office, and Es Freus is just north of Islas. And Es Freus is an island where there's no machinery to clean the beaches. It's just totally natural. And there's these little crystals that are pink. And they were amazed. I mean, they came from the Costa Azul. And it was something that one of the geologists was with amongst us said this is foramnifera. And foramnifera is in the roots of the Posidonia, and it was all along Es Freus, and it's something that if you don't pay attention to what you actually see and appreciate it, it's fantastic. So that was something that they saw in Es Freus, which is one of the places where there's the highest dunes. There's also a lagoon, and I mean there's a variety of places that, if you have the time to enjoy and you have the knowledge and you can visit different places. It's apart from Posidonia, we've got many different places that you can visit by bicycle, by kayaking, by snorkeling, and this I think it's a good job of the whole of the population, from the schools, from the people who live in here, from the local businesses. I think everyone's realised that we're here and we want to be here tomorrow as well.
I mean, that's, for me, I think when I've walked along Islas and I've seen that pink crystal, or pink rose quartz as I like to call it, in the sand, I just, my mouth literally dropped open, and I've spent many hours just standing in those waves with pink crystals wafting around my feet and just feeling like the happiest woman alive. And I've been to Formentera many times. I'm completely in love with it. And I've actually also noticed that you get them on Cala Nova in Ibiza, which I'd never noticed before. I noticed them for the first time in July when I took a little mini break there in a hotel nearby just for a couple of nights, and I was like, that's amazing that it comes from the roots of the Posidonia. So just yet another magical quality that the Posidonia provides us with just pink rose quartz in the sea. I love that. That really makes me happy. So let's go back to Salinas again. And I mean, there are reports that the reserve is also host to 11 species of endemic plants, 7 rare species, and 8 considered vulnerable by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. There's more than 200 different species of birds that have been observed in the area as well, and 171 of these are migratory species, which include the pink flamingos, which are basically my favourite thing in the world, apart from the pink crystals. Anything pink. But most recently, I really loved reading that some turtles had been released that were found actually at the back end of last year, and they were nurtured and then they were released on Es Cavaller last month, which is so exciting. We did talk about this in the last episode as well, but to know that this area, this protected area that's really been cordoned off, and as you say, these signs go up everywhere, people understand that they need to treat this area with respect. I think to know that it's really thriving with so much wildlife, and there's actually even 5 species of mammals that are only found in Ibiza and Formentera, feels really special, and like the work is actually working.
Well, I think that was amazing. I saw the turtles being released in Ibiza. What they said was that in captivity, having the turtles grow the first few months in captivity highly increases their survival rates. So making that something which is social, which is close to the people, is what makes it special. And I think in the last few years the Balearics is focusing on the positive things, not just on the impacts, but I think as a society, if we concentrate on the good things, it makes everybody work together, and it makes everybody be inspired to do good things. It's not all about obviously what we've been living globally the last year and a half is not so exciting, but I think we've still got lots of things to enjoy and to do. So I think releasing all those turtles was magic.
It was, and it really, blew my mind when I saw it. But I was just so happy to see that they had been, as you said, nurtured and grown, because when they, when you see them releasing the turtles and their tiny little babies, and you just think, oh my God, you've got literally no chance of lasting a day or two. It almost looked kind of cruel, like that these little tiny baby turtles were just going out to sort of fend for themselves, and you just think it looked a bit scary. So I was really happy to see them a little bit bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, well, they've been with experts. They've been with the Centro de Recuperación de Especies Marinas, which is those are the experts that have been preparing them for their release. If they're prepared, I'm sure they've been tagged, so they'll be able to make a monitoring on them, and that will just improve for the next turtles that arrive on our beaches. And for the next lot that will be released. So it's a question of just going forward.
I'm really, really happy to hear about the turtles. And I think, obviously one of the main reasons that the Posidonia is so important is that it does, play home to so many different species. But it's also a huge part, or even the main part of the reason why the Salinas marine protected area was created, and Ibiza was given, as you mentioned earlier, its much coveted World Heritage status in 1999 under the denomination of Ibiza Biodiversity and Culture. So, I think when we talk about this, most people just think of Dalt Villa that gives us that status, and it's not. It's our pristine seas that are, doing a lot of the work there. So there's also work being done to reduce or eliminate the plastic problems that we're also facing. And I think, it's really important to talk to you about this, Daisy, because you know a lot about it. And I think, I'd love to know what the latest is on the laws here, because I remember when we last spoke and we talked about Spain sort of not doing its bit with recycling. And I remember reading that Ibiza generates 36% more waste per person than the rest of Spain. And much of this is actually coming from plastic. So what is going on right now that you know of right here? Ooh. When you untangle yourself from your sunglasses.
So the data you have to pinpoint. We are a touristic destination, as many other places on the coast of Spain. So the kilos of waste per inhabitant are divided by the inhabitants, not the total people that are actually on the island of Ibiza or Formentera. The Balearic Islands have, as well as having a pioneering law on protecting Posidonia, also have a pioneering law on the waste management. So now what we are talking about is not on recycling, but on waste prevention, which is what we're also talking about, the anchoring, so preventing the impact. And one of the good jobs Ibiza has been doing, and Formentera, and now the whole of the Balearics on plastic is this certification process, which is awarding, recognising the different businesses who are reducing the use of plastic. There's also initiatives on the different islands on doing organic waste separation, so composting, so that we can return that compost to the lands and make them more productive. So again, Baleares is one of the key areas and regions that are going forward with many very brave regulations. So I think this is something to be proud of, and it goes in consonance with the education and with the brave authorities who are actually getting a hold of the problems and going for those solutions. So it's not just about the plastics. I mean, we've got those pure turtles will be swimming, hopefully. So it's not about cleaning the beaches. It's about making those beaches not get to the point where all those plastics are arriving. It's reducing the plastic use and reducing the waste that we produce in the tourism sector and all the different sectors that we have on the islands.
I mean, I can just hear the sound actually of a party boat that started up in the background, which always makes me chuckle. Sunset is coming. But I think, as you've just said, single-use plastics, there's obviously this aim and, everyone's gunning for this 2023, let's get rid of everything. And obviously there was such a focus on straws, plastic straws for the last couple of years. And of course, with Ibiza not having its nightclubs open for the past 2 summers, I guess the amount of plastic straws has probably been reduced by a couple of 100,000 or more, probably a couple of million, actually. I wouldn't be surprised. But I think, I was a little bit disappointed the other weekend. As I said, in July I went for that little cheeky staycation, and, the bathroom was just full of these little teeny little bottles and sachets of shampoo and conditioner. I just think it's just so disappointing to see that still going on. And I know we pay this tourism tax and, put a little bit back in the pot, but at the end of the day, I think, it's a real culprit, unfortunately, for people bringing their little throwaway, takeaway, easy access, lazy kind of way of holidaying on these islands. And that really, I must say, I just found that very disappointing.
Well, it's about plastic production at the minute. I mean, we're converting the economy into using and throwing away. You can even sometimes you can go to a restaurant or to a small cafe and they give you a single-use cup of coffee. And they're charging you to have a coffee on their terrace, and instead of washing those glasses, they actually just put them in the bin. So I think that's just something going to the extreme, and education and awareness has to play an important role, just to remind us that we're changing some kind of behaviours that is making us lazy, but also making us not realise that those turtles might not survive, and what we are doing is we depending on tourism. We want tourists to keep coming, but what they keep coming for is for these beautiful waters. So it's just trying to make the storyline from telling it from the beginning to the end, and every different person and every different type of business, every different entity needs to know the beginning and also the end. It is really deceiving when you go to a hotel and you've got all the small individual sachets, but it's what we were saying. It's not about those sachets being ecological. It's not about those plastic bags being compostable. It's trying to eliminate the use of them. I mean, I carry about my water flask. You've got your reusable bags. It's just a question of habits and deciding what you want to do.
I mean, definitely. It definitely comes down to, individual responsibility and not using those shampoo bottles and not going to the cafe without your reusable coffee cup and not carrying a water flask. These are all things that we can personally change, and change has to start at home and with our own sense of responsibility. I mean, we talked about a lot of this in our last episode with the Balearics Foundation, but I think there's so much money to be made from making sure, as you just mentioned, Ibiza and Mallorca and Formentera stay healthy in terms of the sea and the coastal areas. And I saw that a hell of a lot of money had been generated in Mallorca from having their marine protected areas, from tourism and diving, boating, fishing. But I think there was just one really big question that popped into my mind, and that was like, why isn't there a kind of a tax, or maybe there is, so that those people making the money from such a healthy ecosystem put, say like an agreed percentage back. I think the amount of money that was quoted in an article in The Guardian we talked about last month was 3.3 million that was made from that marine protected area in tourism activity. And of course, is the hotels benefiting from that? And you have to ask yourself, where is that money going? Is any of that money going back into the pot? Because I'm sure it's the same here, just like it's the same in Ibiza. We've just got a little helicopter passing overhead here. So
it was the helicopter coming from the hospital of Ibiza to the hospital of Formentera. So as we all do, we touch wood that it's not somebody we know.
Yeah, I'm sure it's an interesting way of doing things, I guess, to have that sort of immediate connection between the two. You said that you weren't actually born in Formentera because at the time there wasn't actually a hospital here 35 years ago.
Exactly. My mum, who was from Durham, was quite afraid of getting to the moment where she had to go to Ibiza, and she didn't want to have a baby maybe in the middle of the sea of Es Freus, because now we have a helicopter, but before we used to have transport by boat, and it was just one of the small boats as we can see now, just a small boat with a small captain. So my mum went home to mum to have me.
I seriously don't blame her, not one bit. That sounds like a terrifying thing to put all your money on not giving birth in the middle of the sea. Back to the money though, Daisy. Where do you think this 3.3 million that's been made from touristic activities in the sea over in Mallorca, and I'm sure, it's not just there, is it? It's got to be here in Es Freus and in, all the wonderful areas surrounding Ibiza and Salinas. People are, obviously, it's a great thing that being eco-friendly and caring about the environment and protecting the nature is making money, because it gives people, with lots of money, a purpose to look after the environment. That's my humble opinion on it. So the two things feed each other, which is a very positive thing. But equally, you have to wonder, if there's lots of money being made from nature, then nature should benefit more from the money. That's just one question I wanted to ask you.
Well, that's one of the interesting things that, as you said, Maria's is working on it. I mean, businesses are profiting from the good state of the natural environment. So let's put figures to it. Let's make an estimate of the different activities that are being carried out, and let's name everything by its name. So, we've got the nautical sector, we've got the charter companies, we've got the hammocks on the beach, we've got the different beach clubs. They're all making money. So let's put figures to this, and let's realise how much is being returned to protecting the sea and to protect and having these lovely beaches. So I think education and numbers will help make the storyline more interesting, and with the correct arguments to realise, to say, hey, well, if I'm making this kind of money, I can help towards this, or there's some management strategies that are occurring on different sides of the planet. I mean, when I travelled to Belize, we went on a snorkeling trip, and there was a marine protected area, and the local people were looking after that marine protected area. They were the skippers. You had to pay a fee to go into the natural park. You paid the fee to go snorkeling, and that all reverted in the local town. So I don't think it's something that can be too complicated to do in a place like the Balearics. So I think putting figures to the different activities is very wise and will lead to good solutions. So congratulations to Maria to engage with that sort of study.
No, it's just magical work that they're doing, for sure. I mean, obviously we've got this sustainable tourism tax that obviously is the fee that you pay, for example, if you go and stay a night in a hotel. I think it's €2 or €4 per night, per day, or whatever it is. But, with Ibiza's clubs about to reopen this month, I think the questions are starting to come up. Who do we talk to about encouraging a more sustainable tourism model or eco-tourism model? Because there's just, as we've talked about for the last hour, there's such an abundance of beauty here. Incredible farms, the red earth, the pristine crystalline waters. Surely this is the future. This is what's been attracting tourists for the last 2 summers to these beautiful islands, and there has to be perhaps more of a focus now, I think, on a different type of tourism that's a little bit more responsible and a little bit more caring towards Mother Nature.
I mean, last in the MPN workshop, we had the attendance of the director of the marina in San Antonio, and the Club Náutico there is what the director was saying is where do we find the balance, where we win in where we lose. So with figures and actually making a decision on what each island wants and assessing, now that we've had a year and a half without the nightclub industries, to see where is the balance of what kind of activity as islands we want to continue to be, or whether we want to change. I mean, we've seen San Antonio is trying to diversify their tourism, and some places it is working, but it's a question of what the people want their place to be. For example, in Formentera, when we had a movement when they were going to drill for oil. And that was also from Ibiza mainly as well. There was a whole Alianza Mar Blava that said no to prospecciones petrolíferas, no to oil. Why? Because we don't want to exploit the nature and to drill for oil, because we want to benefit from the tourism industry. So it's about making decisions from the place and seeing what you want to see the future. So it's basically, that's politicians' work to do. It's also the entities to do, and it's also the different associations to lead that, and asking ourselves the question of what we want.
Absolutely. And I think, now is the time to strike, with obviously potentially things, I wouldn't say they're going to be returning to normal, but they're definitely going back in that general direction. Okay, lastly, I wanted to ask you about the Marine Forum in Ibiza coming on later in October. And they've got none other than Dr. Sylvia Earle, who is, I believe, the Princess of Asturias, opening the event. He feels a little bit like the female version of David Attenborough of the marine world, with her beautiful Blue Mission project. Am I going to be seeing you there?
Well, I'd love to see you there, yes, Jo. So hopefully I'll be crossing the Freus to learn from all the different experts that'll be in the Foro Marino. And Sylvia Earle, definitely, yes, it'd be lovely to see her again. I think it's not the first time she'll be coming. So, yeah.
So I said it was my last question, I lied. If you could actually, lastly, wave a magic wand, what is the one huge change that you would really love to see on Formentera to help protect the beautiful environment here?
The magic one would be to realise that it's about everyone putting their own little bit towards preservation. It's the mission. So if we protect the island, the business is going to be good. The schools are going to be full of professional people. If we realise that we also need basic services as health services and different professionals in the schools, it's going to go a good way. So it's not just about exploiting the island, it's about giving something back at the same time as we earn our living.
Absolutely. I think, the two things definitely go hand in hand. Daisy, thank you so much for bringing me to this beautiful little rock on Formentera to look out over Ses Salinas, and also for taking the time out of your very, very busy day to come and meet me. And I love the fact that the last time we tried to meet, and I'm going to give this a mention, you actually couldn't make it because you'd knocked your teeth out playing murder ball?
Playing football, women's football. Yes, somebody put the ball in my face and broke my tooth, so I wasn't able to speak properly without a black eye.
Well, I'm glad we got to do this finally with your teeth in, because you look beautiful.
Thank you. The dentist did their jobs.
Excellent. Well done, Mr. Dentist. Daisy, thank you so much for joining us here on the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast.
Thank you, Gang of Witches, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Jo. Enjoy the rest of Formentera.
It was the Ibiza podcast of Gang of Witches, hosted by Jo Youle. See you at the next new moon. Until then, take care of yourselves.